A very good morning to all of you. On behalf of IASMS, IA School of Management Studies, I, Dr. Reena Sham, Head of the Department, extend a very warm welcome to all of you for this two-day workshop on Fundamentals of Research Methodology. It's both an honor and privilege to have with us Dr. D. Kumaresan, Principal Lakshmi Narayana Arts and Science College for Women, Dharmapuri, as a resource person for today's workshop. Sir has rich experience of 23 years in teaching and 18 years in research. He is specialized in finance and marketing. He is serving as a Senate member of Periyar University, Salem, and he's acted as external examiner for the conduct of PhD Viva Voce examination for 14 candidates. Sir has been a resource person for almost 80 international and national conferences and seminars and more than 20 webinars. Sir is also a motivational speaker, and Sir is also a trainer who has conducted sessions on positive thinking, time management, memory techniques, and stress management. Sir has conducted over 70 workshops on research methodology in reputed universities and colleges. He has published more than 35 papers and articles in refereed journals and is serving as member of editorial board peer-reviewed committee of reputed journals. He's been acting as the executive committee member of Indian Accounting Association Salem chapter. He's a life member of Indian Academy Researchers Association. He has been honored with the awards like the D.Lit by the International Economics University for SAARC countries, Shiksha Ratan Puraskar by Indian International Friendship Society, New Delhi, Lifetime Achievement Award by ESN Publications, Chennai. He is also a recipient of the Best Citizens Award by Tiruvallur Ilakkiya Award and Swami Vivekananda Award for his contributions in social service. He has also been conferred the Seve Chudar Award by Thai Tamil TV YouTube channel of Coimbatore. He has received Lifetime Achievement Award by ESN Publications. He has also had the privilege and fortune of being associated with our former President of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. Sir is also a spiritual orator and Tamil poet. We are indeed honored, humbled, and delighted, sir, to have you with us. And thank you so much for consenting to be the resource person for today's workshop. Over to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Respected Madam Head of the Department, Dr. Reena Shyam, faculty members, Dr. Abhirami, and other learned faculty members, and student participants, a warm and pleasant morning to one and all. At the very outset, I would like to thank the management, principal, head of the department, and faculty members for having given me a wonderful opportunity to share my some of views on basics of research methodology. At this juncture, I would like to appreciate and congratulate the efforts of the Department of Management Studies and Commerce for having initiated to organize such a program for the welfare of the PG students as well as the research scholars. Because it is the time for them to learn how to proceed with their research. For that purpose only, this program has been organized. I hope the participants will be learning at least something from today's workshop so that they can proceed on with their own projects, own research works smoothly and submit a wonderful report based on the research work they are doing. So here, let us now discuss about the basics. A beginner's guide to research. So this is the discussion we are going to make today. What is a research? What are the processes involved in research? See, research is a scientific research, search for knowledge. Search for knowledge in a systematic and scientific way in which knowledge can be gathered, knowledge can be found out. For that purpose only, the research is being carried out. See, the research, in fact, starts with or originates from the review of literature. So what is a literature? What is a review? The literature is existing studies conducted by previous scholars, existing research papers presented and published by various scholars, published annual reports or published reports of any authority. That is called literature. So from the literature, we have to review. Review means re plus view. That is viewing again and again. Viewing the literature in different dimensions, in different views, in different ways, so that we can understand what are all the things that has been already discussed, that has already been studied by the previous scholars. So based on that, we can understand that if anything in our point of view has not been studied by the previous scholars, that is called research gap. So research gap can be identified only by reviewing the existing literature. So for that purpose, we have to start the research with the review of literature. So existing literature, whatever it is, whether it is a previous MPhil dissertation or PhD thesis or a research paper or an article published in a magazine or journal, we have to go through. So after having gone through the literature, the research gap is identified. Based on the research gap, we have to formulate or we have to define the problem. That is called statement of the problem. That is the next process in the research. After having stated or defined the research problem, we have to frame the objectives and hypothesis of our study. After that, we have to go through the data collection. The data collection may be made from either primary sources or secondary sources. After having collected the data, the next step or the next process is data analysis and interpretation. So this is a crucial part in our research. After that, we have to observe the research findings. Based on the research findings, we have to offer suggestions and we have to draw a conclusion. This is the overview of research processes. That is the processes involved in carrying out a research successfully. So it starts with review of literature and ends with the conclusion. So how these processes are to be carried out? As I told you, every research starts with the review of literature. See here, some questions are there. What, when, who, how, why, and where. These are all the questions about the review of literature. So what is the purpose of review of literature? What is learned from the review of literature? This is the first question. The answer is, right from the objectives to the conclusion, everything is gone through thoroughly in the review of literature. So while reviewing the existing literature or the previous literature, we have to go through thoroughly, not just looking at a glance. So we have to go through thoroughly, right from the objectives to the conclusion. You have to study, you have to read the entire paper, entire article or entire study. So that is what we are going to do in the case of review of literature. And the second question is, when the literature is to be reviewed, please understand that the review of literature is to be made before starting the study. Unfortunately, some of the scholars do this work at the end of the study after having completed the analysis, interpretation, and everything. Some scholars, without knowing the significance of review of literature, they just do this as a formality. They take it as a formality and they do this at the end of the study. In fact, it is not the right procedure to review the literature. So the literature of the review of literature is to be made before starting the study. We have to select a tentative topic. We have to select the tentative title of the study or area of the study, right? We have decided. See, for example, work-life balance. See, work-life balance is the proposed tentative topic, that's all. But it should be correctly stated. It is not just the exact topic. It is just to have an idea. So work-life balance or any HR practices like that. So that is the area of the study or proposed topic, that is tentative only. So before finalizing the topic, we have to conduct the review of literature. So before starting the study, we have to review the presently available literature. Based on that only, we can identify the research gap. That is, the gray areas which have not been focused or which has not been concentrated or not analyzed by the previous scholars to a greater extent. See, the problem identification itself is a crucial part, because we have to understand the areas which have not been covered by the previous scholars to a large extent. That is to be focused. Because if there are so many studies on a particular topic, then there is no need for doing any further research, because so many solutions are there. So many studies are there, means there is no use of conducting a new study. So after having reviewed the existing literature, we have to understand the gray areas, that is the areas which have not been focused by the previous scholars. That is to be done. Then, who are the sources of review of literature? Who provides us the literature? The previous scholars, either the previous researchers or previous authors, previous scholars. They provide us the dissertation, the thesis or research paper or article. So the sources of the literature are the previous scholars. Then the next question is, how to review the literature? I told you already, no, thoroughly. The literature review should be done thoroughly. It is not just looking at a glance on the review on the literature. So you have to thoroughly study the entire paper or the entire study or the entire article. Each and every part of the article or the paper is very important to form a basis for our study. So we have to go through, we have to study the entire literature thoroughly. Then, why the review of literature is being carried out? In order to design our own study. So how we are going to carry out our study? What are the procedures we propose to follow in our study? So what is the methodology to be adopted? What is the sampling design we are going to adopt? What is the sampling method? What is the sample size we are going to determine for our own study how the methodology is to be designed, how the tools of analysis are to be decided, on what basis a particular statistical tool is to be selected. All these things can be done only if we thoroughly study the review of literature. So this is the purpose of conducting the review of literature. So why? The next question is where? Already I told you, no, previous studies, dissertations, thesis, journals, articles, newspapers, magazines, from all these resources, we can conduct the review of literature. So these are all the questions: what, when, who, how, why, and where about the review of literature. Why I am emphasizing you the review of literature is this is the origin, in fact. So based on the several researches, based on the several review of literature, we can identify the research gap. Now here, let me ask you one question. Now you can answer in the chat box, right? What is meant by success? What is meant by success? The participants can answer through the chat box. What is meant by success? Dear participants, you can answer through chat box. What do you mean by success? Success is achievement, super, hard work plus smart work, achieving something what we wish for, the stage after achieving your work, achieving our goal, wonderful. Yes, happiness, achieving our goal, the result of our hard work. Nice. Any other answer? Yes, success is achievement, hard work plus smart work, the stage after achieving your work, achieving our goal, happiness, the result of our hard work, the achievement of desired visions and planned goals. Okay, very nice. So this is what review of literature. Now we have completed the part of review of literature, because success is a known concept. Everybody knows what is a success. We know. But see, the views are different. One says that it is achieving something what we wished for, sir. The next one says that it is the stage after achieving our work, achieving our goal, happiness, the result of our hard work, sir. Hard work plus smart work, sir. So these are the different ways we look at the term success. It is already known concept. What is success is already known concept for everybody. But we view the term success in different ways. Now see, the Pooja says hard work plus smart work plus goal plus happiness equal to success. Yes, so many definitions have been given. That is what review of literature. So success is a literature. We view the literature in different ways. Every one of us has different views. That is called review of literature, right? From this literature, the next step, as I told you, is to identify the research gap. At this point, let me tell you a small story, right? There was a rich man. He is a great scientist too. He was driving his car to reach a seminar. He wanted to attend a conference or seminar. For that purpose, he was driving his car and he was moving. On the way, what happened? One of his tires has got punctured. So he wanted to replace that tire with a spare one. Nobody was there. He was alone. He started unscrewing the bolts of the punctured tire, and he wanted to replace that tire with the spare tire. In the meantime, there was a drainage nearby, and the bolts which he has unscrewed from the tire have fallen into the drainage. This has happened. Now he wanted to get the bolts back from the drainage. He is well groomed, well dressed, looking in a royal manner. The bolts have fallen into the drainage. He has to pick up. He has to bring back the bolts from the drainage so that only the tire can be replaced. So how to do this? He is looking for help from anybody. By that time, there was a man passing by. He looked very ugly, not well dressed, not groomed. He was not looking in a good manner. So that person passed by him. He himself asked this gentleman, "Sir, what happened? May I help you, sir?" But this gentleman did not want to get any help from that particular man. Then he started moving. But this gentleman, just a moment, thought, if we leave him, we cannot have anybody else to help us. So let us call him back, like that. Then he called him, "Hello, please come here, come here." Then he came. Now the gentleman asked that man. He said, "Sir, what can I do for you, sir?" Then he explained the situation. This gentleman explained the situation and asked that guy to pick up the bolts from the drainage. He said, "Sir, I can do the work, sir. I can pick up the bolts. I can bring back the bolts from the drainage. I have no bother at all. But one thing, I may tell you a suggestion. Can I tell you, sir?" "Yes, please tell me." Then this guy told this gentleman that, "Sir, every tire has 4 bolts. If you unscrew one bolt from any tire, even then that tire will be intact. So there are remaining 3 tires. You can unscrew one bolt from each of these 3 tires, and these bolts can be placed on the 4th tire so that all the 4 tires will be intact. You can move the car to certain extent, to the nearest city you can move. Then you can buy some new 4 bolts and you can place it on the 4 tires. It is my suggestion." Like that, that guy told him. See, this is what research gap. That gentleman is a great scientist. He is a rich man. He is very intelligent, brilliant too. He knows so many things. But in this point of view, he has not thought. So this is the different view from a different guy. So for that purpose only, we are conducting the review of literature. So by conducting the review of literature, we can identify the research gap, right? So this is what research gap. Then, based on the research gap, we have to define the problem. So we have to define the problem. Yes. What is our research topic? What is our research problem? I told you, for example, HR practices, or brand loyalty, or financial performance, or working capital management, or work-life balance, or stress management. These are the several areas or tentative topics on which we may conduct research. But the thing is, the problem should be unique. The title should be novel. It should not have been studied by any previous scholars. So we have to define the problem completely and clearly without any ambiguity. Those who read your problem, those who read your title should understand the purpose of your study. What purpose for which the problem has been, the study has been conducted. So that the topic should clearly indicate what study you have made. So the research problem should be defined clearly. For example, if we take the work-life balance is mainly related to women employees, women entrepreneurs, because they have to maintain balance between their career as well as the domestic life. So that is called work-life balance. So here, work-life balance is a simple term. But while defining the problem, we have to define or state the problem clearly. So how to define the problem? Work-life balance, okay. Women entrepreneurs or women employees, okay. Then in which sector? For example, IT sector or higher educational sector or insurance sector or banking sector, like that. So first we have decided to conduct the study on work-life balance. Then we wanted to conduct among women employees. Then the sector in which they are working, banking sector or insurance sector or higher education sector, right? Then the area, the study area is to be decided. For example, if you are conducting the study in Bangalore, so these are all the things which we are going to integrate and combine so that we may define the research problem. So the statement of the problem will be, or title of the problem will be, that is, study on work-life balance of women employees in IT sector with reference to Bangalore. That's all. So a study on work-life balance of women employees in IT sector with reference to Bangalore. That's it. So this is the way in which you can define the problem. This is just an example, right? So here, the statement of the problem. The previous studies have been reviewed. Based on the review of literature, we have decided or we have identified the gap. So here, how to define the problem? The previous studies reviewed indicate that there have been not many studies on work-life balance of women employees in IT sector. You leave the area. Three things are important. That is work-life balance of women employees in IT sector, or work-life balance of women entrepreneurs. Even we can conduct the study with the women entrepreneurs. So on whom we are going to conduct the study? Either with the women employees or with the women entrepreneurs. So they only have the problem of balancing with the career as well as the domestic life. That is what called work-life balance. So how they balance the balance both the life, career or work as well as the life. So that is called work-life. So here, there have been not many studies focusing on the work-life balance. Okay. So this is how we have to define the problem. Right. After that, we have to probe certain questions. We call it as research questions. Along with the definition of the problem, we have to raise certain questions, raise certain research questions. So these are the questions for which the solutions are to be found in my study. So what are the questions for which the solutions are sought in this study? I conduct the study to find out solution for these questions. So definition of the problem is different. Based on the problem, several questions are asked. So what are the questions? What could be the probable questions? What is our study? The study is about the work-life balance. Then of women employees in IT sector. Okay. These three things we are concentrating on in our study. So what is work-life balance? Work, what about work? What about the life? So here, what is the work environment? What is the work atmosphere? What is the working climate? What is the perception of women employees about the working culture, working environment, working atmosphere? Like this, you can raise the question. Then come to life, family. So what are the supports extended by the family members? If she is married, then she has to get help or support from the spouse, from the husband, from the children, from other family members. If she is not married, she may get support from parents as well as the brothers or sisters. Like that, she has to get support, because to manage the work and life, she is in need of support from the family members as well as the working or the colleagues. So what is the working environment? One question. What is the support from family members? This is another question. So support from the colleagues, support from the superiors, support from the subordinates, working environment, safety measures or HR practices even, that can also be considered. So these are the several questions raised along with the research problem. So work, what about the working environment? What about the family environment? Then the next thing is women employees. What are the problems faced by them? Problems encountered by the women employees. Either there could be some gender bias or gender discrimination, even with the monetary consideration, the salary or payment when compared with the male counterparts. Ladies or women employees may be given lower pay structure. So that kind of problem. So harassment, then abusing, all these things are the problems faced by women employees. Then at the same time, what are the opportunities or what are the challenges? What are the problems? So these are all several questions. Then come to IT sector. In this sector, what is their growth opportunity? What are the opportunities available for women employees in IT sector? She may be the team member, later team leader, project leader. Like that, she may have several promotional opportunities, career growth opportunities, career growth advancement, like that. So these are the several questions. What is the working environment? What is the support from the family members? What are the problems faced by them? What are the opportunities? These are all evolving around the problem chosen for our study. That is work-life balance of women employees in IT sector with reference to Bangalore, with reference to Mysore, with reference to Osur, like that. So these are all the research questions. Then we have to understand, is there any need for conducting another study? Because the previous studies, the previous literature has given us an overview that some studies have been conducted in the past on a topic which is related to our current problem. So some of the studies are there, not nothing is carried out. Already some scholars might have studied, right? If some studies are there, then what is the need for conducting another study? So we have to explain. See here, the previous studies have focused on work-life balance of women entrepreneurs or women employees in banking sector, in insurance sector, in higher educational sector. So many studies have been conducted, but a few studies are there. There are only a few studies about the work-life balance of women employees in IT sector. This is one thing. Then what we are going to study here, we are going to study about the problems faced by the women employees. Then support from the colleagues or superior subordinate relationship, welfare measures provided in the company, like that. Several things that has not been studied earlier are going to be studied in this research. So this is the need for another study, like that we have to explain. Then we have to define the scope of the study. Scope is nothing but the border, the limit with which we are going to complete our study. So these are the areas which we are going to cover in our study. So as I told you, we are going to cover or we are going to find answers or solutions for several questions. No, that is support from the colleagues, support from the family, problems faced, opportunities. All these things are going to be covered in this study. So that is called scope of the study. Then objectives. Here again, based on our research problems, research questions, here we have to frame the objectives of our study. That is to examine. What we are going to examine here, we are going to examine, as I told you, support from the colleague, support from the superiors, or cordial relationship with the subordinate and superior, or welfare measures. These are all the things which can support you to maintain your family and work life. So here we have to frame the objective like this. It should start with to examine subordinate superior relationship, superior subordinate relationship in IT companies, IT sector. See, superior subordinate relationship plays a vital role in maintaining the work-life balance. Working environment also is crucial in maintaining the work-life balance. So, what is the superior subordinate relationship? So, to examine superior subordinate relationship in IT companies, this is first objective. The second objective is to analyze the support for women employees from the family members. To analyze. First objective, I told you, to examine. Use different phrases for every objective. To examine, first one. For the second one, to analyze. To analyze the support from family members of women employees. Third. The second one. Then the third one, to identify. To identify. First one, to examine. Second one, these are all just examples. You can use different phrases. So to examine, to analyze, to study. Now the third one is to identify the problems encountered by the women employees in IT sector. Third one. Then the fourth one is to assess the growth opportunities. To assess the growth opportunities available for women employees in IT sector. So like this, you have to frame the objectives. See, if we look at the research questions, need for the study, scope of the study, and objectives of the study, they may seem to be same. In all these cases, we have explained about the working environment, family support, problems, and the opportunities. But we have to explain in different words. Using different phrases, we have to explain in different manner. So after having framed the objectives, we have to formulate the hypothesis. Hypothesis is plural. Hypothesis is singular. There are two hypotheses. That is null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. Here, for formulating the hypothesis, we have to understand what are the variables. What are the variables? The variables can be again classified as dependent variable and independent variable. The dependent variable is dependent on any independent variable. So it is always dependent on some other variables. So we call it as dependent variable. The variables which are not dependent on any other variable is called independent variable. So what is dependent variable? What is independent variable? So for formulating the hypothesis, we should understand clearly what are the dependent variables we have considered for our study. What are the independent variables? And we have to understand that the same variable may be treated as a dependent variable in a particular question. In a particular part of analysis, the same variable may be considered as a dependent variable. And at the same time, the same variable may be considered as an independent variable in another part of the study, another part of the same study. In different analysis, the same variable may be considered as independent variable. So it is the nature which decides whether the particular variable is a dependent variable or an independent variable. So we have to mention clearly what are the dependent variables, what are the independent variables. For example, one objective, the first objective of our study is to examine superior subordinate relationship. Superior subordinate relationship in IT companies. Okay. So this is the first objective. So superior subordinate relationship. What is it? The support, the guidance, the direction given by the superior to the subordinate. This is called top-down approach. In our management studies, we call it as top-down approach. The policies of the management, the policies of the employer is, the policies are being conveyed, being explained to the subordinates. One. Then the guidance is given, the direction is given, how to complete a particular assignment, what is expected, what is assigned by the management to the subordinates, by the superiors to the subordinate, how to complete this work, how to carry out this work, how to complete it in within a specific time. Like that, the guidance is given by the superior. This is what called top-down approach. At the same time, suggestions are solicited by the management, by the superior, from the subordinates. Even a subordinate may offer a suggestion for the development of the company, to maintain the cordial relationship, to maintain the customer base. Even a subordinate may be having some sort of suggestions that can be transformed, or that can be conveyed to the superiors. The superior should be ready to get suggestion from the subordinates. So that is what called superior subordinate relations. Okay. See here, superior subordinate relationship, we ask several questions in our questionnaire. They are called variables, right? So these are all maybe independent variables. What is dependent variable? So what is the relationship? What are the independent variables? What is the dependent variable? For example, the independent variables, for example, what are the independent variables? Nature of work, type of employment, or category. Women employees we have considered, so there is no need for gender. Age may be considered, educational qualification, experience. So these kind of demographic variables may be considered as independent variable. So these are all the independent variables. Age, experience, category or designation, experience. These are all considered as independent variables. Then what is dependent variable? I told you, no, we are giving lot of questions about the perception of women employees regarding superior subordinate relationship. We ask them to state their perception or their opinion about the superior subordinate relationship. As I told you, policies are explained clearly. Policies are explained clearly to the subordinates. We may have this question in a 5-point Likert scale. Strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. Like that, 5-point Likert scale may be used for getting data regarding this question. That is, the agreement, the level of agreement is given. The question contains level of agreement. Strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. Please mind you, whenever such a question is asked about the level of agreement, what are the options given? Strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. So here, the thing which we have to keep in mind is the question should be in a statement form. Please understand that the question which we are asking the respondent should be in a statement form. See, policies. I told you, no, policies of the management are clearly explained by the superiors. So it is a statement. For this only, they can say that agree, strongly agree, or disagree, or strongly disagree. Like that they will answer. It should not be in a factor form. What is factor form? Explanation of policies. That's all. Or even by superiors. This is not the right way in which the question is to be framed for 5-point scale, that is level of agreement. Explanation of policies by superior. This is given in a factor form, not in a statement form. So how to convert this factor form of question into statement form of question? That is, policies of the management are clearly explained by the superiors. Suggestions are solicited from the subordinates. Subordinates are encouraged to participate in management. Directions are given by the superiors. The grievances of subordinates are redressed by the superiors. The work of or the achievements of subordinates are properly recognized or appreciated by the superiors. So these are the examples of questions that is in statement form. So policies of the management are explained clearly by the superiors. Suggestions are solicited from the subordinates. Proper guidance is given by the superiors. Directions are given by the superiors properly. Achievements of subordinates are recognized, rewarded suitably by the superiors. Grievances of subordinates are redressed or listened to by the superiors. So in this way, we have to construct the questions. So here, these are the dependent variables. What is it? Explanation of policies is a dependent variable. Here, the independent variables are, as I told you, age of the respondent, experience of the respondent, nature of job, or type of or category of the employee, right? These are the independent variables, and these questions are dependent variables, as I told you, right? See, based on this, we have to formulate the hypothesis. See here, I told you, no, there are two types of hypothesis. One is null hypothesis and the other is alternative hypothesis. In the case of null hypothesis, null means nothing. Null means nil. Nothing is there. So the null hypothesis contains the words like this: there is no significant. Understand? And underline significant. There is no significant relationship. Understand? There is no significant relationship between this dependent variable and this independent variable. That's all. Now we compare age of the employee and perception on the policy explanation by the superiors. Policy explanation by superiors is a dependent variable. Age independent variable. Experience independent variable. Nature of job independent variable. Educational qualification independent variable. Right? So we compare the independent variables and dependent variables. When these variables are compared, the hypothesis should be written like this. That is, there is no significant relationship or association, both are same, relationship or association between age of the employee and the perception on policy explanation by superiors. Or as a whole, if we write the hypothesis, we can write like this: there is no significant relationship, not a difference. Please understand, I'll explain you what is difference. There is no significant relationship between age and superior subordinate relationship. There is no significant relationship between experience and superior subordinate relationship. There is no significant association between nature of job or category of employee and superior subordinate relationship. Like this we have to write. So what is significant? What is significant? There is some relationship we understand. It is obvious that there is a relationship between age and superior subordinate relationship. That is there. But the thing is whether it is significant or not. So what do you mean by significant? Significant means remarkable, notable. What is remarkable again? What is notable? We fix up the limit. That is, the level of significance is decided. Normally, we consider 5% level of significance. In a general manner, the level of significance is considered as 5% level. That means the significant level is 5%. What is our null hypothesis? There is no significant relationship between age and superior subordinate relationship. This is null hypothesis. What is about the alternative hypothesis? You just replace only one word from the null hypothesis. Instead of there is no significant relationship, you use it as there is a relationship. That's all. There is no significant relationship, there is a significant relationship. That is the only difference. Now let me come to the level of significance again. So based on the results, we are going to draw the conclusion. We are going to write the interpretation or inference. How to arrive or how to draw conclusion. The level of significance is 5%. it says that we consider the probability value. We consider the probability value, that is simply called as p-value. If the p-value is less than 0.05, here the 0.05 means level of significance. What is the level of significance? 5%. If 5% is expressed in terms of decimal numbers, it is read as 0.05. Please understand, it is not 0.5. Be careful, it is 0.05. That means probability. Probability means chance of occurring, chance of happening. Chance of happening of null hypothesis is less than 5%. For example, p-value is 0.03 if we take it as. That means the probability is less than the level of significance. The probability is less than the level of significance. It means the probability is lesser. What about the null hypothesis? There is no significant relationship. It is an assumption. Hypothesis is an assumption. Now the result says that there is a less chance, less possibility, less probability towards the null hypothesis. What is null hypothesis? There is no significant relationship. If there is less chance, less possibility for this, we have to reject. We have to reject. If more possibility is there, we can accept, or otherwise we can reject. So here, as I told you, for example, the p-value which we have arrived from the analysis is 0.03. What level of significance we have considered? 5%, that is 0.05. Now the p-value arrived is 0.03. It is less than 0.05. It means the possibility for the null hypothesis is less. If the possibility is less, then we can reject the null hypothesis. If we reject the null hypothesis, obviously we have to accept the alternative hypothesis. What is alternative hypothesis? We have to agree that there is a significant relationship between age of the employee and superior subordinate relationship. That's all. So this is what about the hypothesis. Now, types of research from the point of view of application, objectives, type of information sought. We can divide the types of research into three broad categories: application point of view, objectives point of view, as well as the type of information sought point of view. On the basis of application, we can divide again the types of research into two, that is pure research or basic research. Pure research and applied research. The pure research is science-based. So something new is invented. Some new concept is introduced by conducting a research. That is called pure research. What is applied research? The already invented or introduced concepts are being applied. So the first one may be conceptual research. Now this is applied research. The concepts which have already been defined is now applied in our study. That is called applied research. What about the types of research from the point of view of objectives? Number one, exploratory research. Number 2, descriptive research. Number 3, correlation research. And number 4, explanatory research. So, exploratory, descriptive, correlation, and explanatory. What is exploratory? Nothing is known already. It is very new. We don't know the facts. In that case, if we are conducting the study to know the unknown facts, that is called exploratory. So here we are exploring the hidden things. We are exploring the unknown things. So that is called exploratory research. Descriptive research. Something is known. We know something. That is now explained. That is now described. We call it as descriptive research. Then correlation research. That is what I told you, to understand the relationship between two variables. That is called correlation research. Then the last one is explanatory research. So the concepts which are already known, in the case of exploratory research, I told you nothing is known, we are exploring. Here it is already known, but we are explaining in a new way. That is called explanatory research. Then, according to the type of information sought, we define the research into two categories, that is quantitative research and the qualitative research. Based on the numbers, if we conduct a study, it is called quantitative research, and based on the behavior, if the research is conducted, it is called as qualitative research. Again, see here, basic research is undertaken to accumulate the information, extending the base of knowledge in a discipline. Why? That is pure science. Bench of scientists, natural science or nanoscience, something not known, not familiar, is being explored. Here, applied research, it focuses on finding an immediate solution to an existing problem. Some problem is there. Here, we are going to find out certain immediate solution. What is the goal? In case of clinical science, that is practice setting, practical setting, everything is there, right? Then again, we can define the, we can distinguish the types of research: exploratory research, descriptive research, and casual research. On the basis of objective, we can classify, we can differentiate the types of research. The objective of exploratory research is to discover ideas and insights, because it is already not known. It is ambiguous. We have to discover certain ideas. We have to find out certain insights into that particular concept. That is called exploratory research. Then descriptive. It is used to describe market characteristics. How is the buying behavior? What is the brand loyalty? What is the satisfaction level of the consumers? Like that, we are conducting the research. That kind of research is called descriptive research. Then casual research. Based on the objective, we define the casual research as it is to determine the cause and effect of relationships. So this is the cause, this is the effect. We compare the cause and effect. That is called casual research. On the basis of characteristics also, we can distinguish the different types of research. On the basis of characteristics, we call it as it is flexible or versatile. It often starts the research processes, exploratory research. Whereas in the case of descriptive research testing hypothesis. So here only we test the hypothesis. It is pre-planned and a structured design. Whereas in the case of casual research, we manipulate. So manipulation of one or more independent variables. That is called casual research. And on the basis of a hypothesis, we can define the research into different categories. That is, in the case of exploratory research, none or very vague and ill-defined. I told you, no, it is very vague. It is ambiguous. Nothing is known. Nothing is defined clearly. So that is called exploratory research. In the case of descriptive, it is tentative and speculative. We assume that there is a significant relationship between consumers' income and consumers' spending behavior, like that. Then, here in the case of casual research, it is very specific. So this is the difference. And on the basis of type of data, we can differentiate the types of research. Exploratory research is qualitative, whereas descriptive and casual researches are based on the quantitative data. Then methods. In the case of exploratory research, it is based on different methods: expert surveys, pilot surveys, case studies, secondary data, as well as the qualitative research. Whereas in the case of descriptive study, the different methods used are secondary data, surveys, panels, and observational data. Whereas in the case of casual research, it is based on the experiments. By conducting experiments, we collect certain data, and based on that, the quantitative research is being conducted in casual type of research. Then ability to measure casuality. Here, none. No ability is there to measure casuality in the case of exploratory research. In the case of descriptive research, we can predict, but it cannot be confirmed. We can predict, prediction can be made, but it cannot be confirmed in the case of descriptive research. But in the case of casual research only, the cause and effect relationship is being established. So there is a perfect ability to measure the causality. Once again, we consolidate the difference between these three types of research. So exploratory research is ambiguous. Descriptive research is somewhat defined. Casual research is clearly defined problem. So here, the uses. Exploratory research is used to understand the structure, to formulate problems precisely, to generate hypotheses, to develop measurement scales. For this purpose, exploratory research is used. What about descriptive research? Describe consumers or customers or competitors, understand market size, segment markets, measure performance, that is share of wallet, brand awareness, etc. Casual research, to uncover the casualty, to understand the performance effects of marketing mix elements. So cause and effect. Now, we come to the data source, primary data and secondary data. What is a primary data? External data and internal data. We can classify the data source into two, external and internal source. In the case of external source, we again divide it into two, primary data and secondary data. What are the examples of primary data? Documents, creative works, interviews, man-made materials, and surveys. In the case of secondary data, the examples are unpublished theses and dissertations, manuscripts, books, and journals. Again, to know clearly, the method of data collection is presented in a different manner. So secondary sources are there. They are the documents, that is government publications, earlier research, census, personal records, claim histories, service records are the documents from which the secondary data can be collected. In the case of primary sources, we divide it into three: observation, interview, and question. In the case of observation, again, we divide it into two, that is from participants and from non-participants. Regarding the interview method of primary data collection, we divide it into two, structured interview and unstructured interview. Then in the case of questionnaire, we divide it into two again, that is mailed questionnaire and collective questionnaire. Then sample size. We have to determine the sample size. A population is there. We are not conducting the study to the entire population. The study is conducted among a sample only. So what is a sample size? You have to determine. The sample size can be determined based on the 3 criteria, that is population size, confidence level, and margin of error. So there are 3 parameters. One is population size, the second one is confidence level, and the third one is margin of error. What is confidence level? I told you know the level of significance. If the level of significance is 5%, then the confidence level is 95%. Then the confidence level is 99%, where the level of significance is 1%. Here, margin of error. To what extent the error is permitted? 5%, 2.5%, or 1%. So these 3 margins of error are given. So 2 levels of confidence is given, that is 95% and 99%. Margin of error is given in 3 numbers, that is 5%, 2.5%, and 1%. Then population size. This is the standard sample size. What is given here? 80, 94, 99, and all. There, the sample size. When population size is 100, confidence level is 95, and the margin of error is 5, the ideal sample size would be 80. Likewise, the sample size and confidence level is same, only the margin of error is now reduced from 5% to 2.5%. In this case, understand the sample size is increased. In the case of 1% margin of error, again the sample size is increased to 99. See the difference. Now, the population size increases from 100 to 500. Sample size is increased to 80 to 270, 94 to 377, 99 to 475. See here in this case, confidence level is increased from 95% to 99%. See the difference. The margin of error is same, population size is same, the sample size is increased from 80 to 87. So when the confidence level is increased, sample size is increased. When the margin of error is decreased, then sample size is increased. When the population size is increased, sample size is also increased. So 3 criteria. One is population size, second one is confidence level, and the third one is margin of error. In the case of population size and confidence level, when these criteria, that is when population size increases, sample size also increases. When confidence level increases, the sample size also increases. But in the case of margin of error, when the margin of error decreases, sample size increases, and vice versa. That's all. So there is a direct relationship between population size and sample size, confidence level and population size, sample size. But there is an opposite relationship between margin of error and the sample size. So how to define the sample size? This is the general idea which I can give you. This is a standard size of sample based on the population size, confidence level, and margin of error. Sir, is there any formula? Yes. Now, with the help of online calculators, we can define the sample size using the population size is given, confidence level is given, and margin of error is given. See, what is the population size? So this much of size of population is there. But what is the sample size? 385. See here, 100, 80, 500, 270, 1000, 278, 10,000, 270. See, 1 lakh, 383, 5 lakhs, 384, 10 lakhs, then also 384. Here also 663, 663. In the case of confidence level is 99%. I told you no, generally we take it as 95%. So in the case of 95% confidence level and 5% margin of error, after 5 lakhs of population size, it is saturated. Even for 10 lakhs, it is 384. Even for millions, billions, or trillions of population size, the ideal sample size will be 385 only. So even for infinite population or a quite large population, we can fix the sample size as 385 when we define the confidence level as 95% and margin of error as 5%. The ideal sample size would be 385. That is enough. That is ideal sample size. You can fix up a higher sample size as well. See, for example, 400, 500 or 600. Like that, you can increase the sample size. When the sample size is increased, what is the purpose? What is the use? Whenever the sample size is increased, the accuracy of result is also increased. But at the same time, you should not increase the sample size to a greater extent, like I have taken 1 lakh sample size, sir. I have taken 50,000 sample size, sir. It is not at all required. I told you, no, even in the case of infinite sample size, infinite population size, the sample size of 385 itself is enough. So we can have it as 400, 500 or 600. That is enough. You can justify. That is the reasonable sample size. Okay. Then, what are the sampling methods? Basically, the sampling methods can be classified into two: probability sampling methods and non-probability sampling methods. Probability means possibility of chances are happening. So here, one thing we have to keep in mind is, whenever we choose the probability sampling method, we should understand that each and every element of population should be given equal opportunity of being considered as a sample. So, probability sampling is chosen when there is an equal opportunity given to each element of population for being selected as a sample. It implies that the population size should be finite and known. If the population size is finite and known, then only we can select the probability sample. If it is infinite or if it is unknown, then it is always better suggested to go for non-probability sampling methods. So some important methods of sampling are given: simple random sampling, cluster sampling, systematic sampling, then stratified random sampling. These are the most widely used probability sampling methods. Whereas in the case of non-probability sampling methods, convenience sampling, judgmental or purpose sampling, snowball sampling, and quota sampling. So these are the various sampling methods. Let us see a few important methods. Number one, simple random sampling method. Simple random sampling method. See here. There is no proper method to select the samples. Just based on the lottery method, we are choosing the samples. That is, the samples are drawn by using the lottery method. That is called simple random method. Then stratified random sampling. See here, the population is, see this is the population. The top square is given, no. This is called population. These are the elements of population. We divide the population into subunits. These are the subdivisions or small units. See here, the elements are divided based on the homogeneity. See, all the squares are brought here, all the circles are categorized as one unit, and all the triangles are divided as a separate unit. So these are the subdivisions. So the subdivisions can be made based on the homogeneity. One thing. Each subunit is called stratum. Each unit is called stratum. Then samples are drawn from each strata. See, from each strata, we have to draw the samples. The population is divided into different units. Each unit is called stratum. From each stratum, samples are to be selected. That is called stratified random sampling. Then we come to the cluster sampling. See here, unlike the previous one, see here, population is divided into different units. For dividing the population into different units, homogeneity was considered. Homogeneous elements were grouped as a stratum. Whereas in the case of cluster sampling, we divide the population into different units, not based on the homogeneity. See here, all the three are wearing red shirts. So here homogeneity is there. But in this cluster, there is no homogeneity. Here also no homogeneity. Here also no homogeneity. So heterogeneous. In the case of stratified random sampling, homogeneousness is to be followed. Here, the elements are heterogeneous. And in the case of stratified random sampling, samples were drawn from all the strata. Each stratum was considered for selection of sample, whereas in the case of cluster sampling, only a few clusters are selected. See, this cluster, and this cluster are not considered. Only these two clusters, the shaded clusters have been selected for selection of samples. So that is the difference between stratified random sampling and cluster sampling. Then snowball sampling. So here we do not divide the population.
Respected sir.
Hello, madam.
Respected sir.
Yes,
sorry
madam.
to intervene, sir.
Okay,
the students have one or two questions. So shall I ask them to ask when you conclude, sir, or in between?
I'll conclude now. Okay.
Yeah. So I will take. You will take the questions towards the end of the session, sir.
Okay, madam. Okay. I'll complete.
Yeah, sir.
Thank you. So here, snowball sampling, we select one sample, and he lets us know the other samples. He introduces the other sample persons. So that person also introduces another person. This is what called snowball sampling. So these are the different methods. This is a multi-stage sampling method. In the first stage, country is selected. In the second stage, segment is selected. In the third stage, household is selected. And in the fourth stage, samples are selected. This is called multi-stage sampling method. So these are the different sampling methods, right? Then the scales: nominal scale, ordinal scale, interval scale, and ratio scale. These are the 4 scales we are using to define the variable, right? Nominal scale is used to just to label the variables without any quantitative value. But in the case of ordinal, it is similar to the nominal scale, but here some difference is there. That is, the ordinal data are arranged in a particular order. So we call it as ordinal scale. Then in the case of interval scale, a small difference between ordinal scale and interval scale, which is also similar to the ordinal scale, but one difference is that here the order, definite order is there, but there is a difference between data. Then in the case of ratio scale, it takes care of the ratio problem and gives you the most information. So that is the difference between 4 scales. Then hypothesis, I told you. Then outcomes, I told you, 5% level of significance. Null hypothesis, if p value is less than 0.05, then reject the null hypothesis, accept the alternative hypothesis, like this. Then now you can ask any questions.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, madam.
We have one question from Vikram, and
Yes.
he asked that if the rating scales are used, Likert scale, can we use 5-point, 3-point, or 4-point scale, sir?
Yes, any scale may be used in a same study. See, there is no rigid rule that only 5-point scale is to be used, or only 3-point scale or 4-point scale alone is to be used. There is no such rigid rule. We can use different scales for different questions, for different objectives. We frame the questions. No. So for one question, we can have, see, for example, for assessing the level of awareness, we can use 3-point scale. That is extremely aware, somewhat aware, not aware. This is a 3-point scale. For assessing the level of awareness, we are using 3-point scale. For assessing the level of satisfaction in the same study, we can use a 5-point scale like highly satisfied, satisfied, neutral, dissatisfied, and highly dissatisfied. Like that also we can use. There is no such rigid restriction that only one scale to be used. There is no such formality or restriction. You can use different scales of questions in your same study.
Sir, but I think most of the studies, I think what we have seen is they have used 5-point Likert scale.
Yes, madam.
General usage, more of 5-point Likert scale.
Yes, generally 5-point scale is used, madam.
Yeah. So we have a question from Haripriya, and her question is it okay to do research on a topic which is already done by others in different situations? If yes, how can we make our research unique and remarkable?
Yes. Normally, many scholars, even the MPhil scholars and PhD scholars, select the topic like this only. Already done project is there. On some topic, some researches have been done by the previous scholars. They just change the situations or the area of study, just like that they are doing. But it is not always encouraged or appreciated to do like this. You can form your own study. You can define your own topic. That's why I insisted you to go through thoroughly the literature so that you can identify different research gaps. Based on that, you can define your own, you can identify your own research gap and you can fix up the topic uniquely, right? Without fixing the topics like this, using different situations, using different places, it is not always supported or encouraged, madam.
Thank you, sir.
Ah,
For the information of the participants, there is a feedback link which is shared in the chat box. Kindly click on the link so that you would get your e-certificates. So as of now, we don't have any more questions, so we will conclude the session.
okay, madam.
Yeah, as I propose the vote of thanks, I profusely thank Dr. P. Kumareshan sir, who has kindly consented to be a part of this webinar. And I'm sure his talk, his slides were so clear, very beautifully explained, and very simple to the level of the students. And all our students are going to start their third semester project. So the simple explanation that you have given through various stages, right from review of literature, research gap, the beautiful story that you narrated, sir, regarding research gap. Thank you so much for guiding and sharing your knowledge. I think you are an ocean of knowledge, and the time of 1.5 hours is very less for us to grasp and get all that you have. So thank you so much, sir. We are really humbled. Thank you so much for being a part of this session, sir.
Thank you so much, madam.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We are thankful to the management of Indian Academy Group of Institutions for providing us the platform to organize such events. Thankful to our director, sir, Dr. Srinidhi K. Parthasarathy, for his guidance in all our endeavors. Thanks to the faculty team for their cooperation. And we are extremely grateful to each and every one of the participants. And once again, sir, thank you so much for your time, effort, and all the knowledge that you have shared with us. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Yes, madam. I would like to thank all the organizers for having given me the wonderful opportunity to share some of my views on the basics of research, and I extend my sincere thanks to all the participants for their patient listening for the past 1.5 hours and so. So I hope that little knowledge I have shared with you, you can use the things which you have learned today, and whenever you have any clarification, you can contact me for further clarifications. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Very nice session, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.